everybody. My name is Caesar Jenkins. Everyone calls me Caesar. And today I'm talking about Django-nonrel or Django-nonrelational. What is Django-nonrel? Django-nonrel is a fork of Django. It's a very small fork. There's not a lot of changes, but what it does is we'll patch Django so that Django doesn't assume that every auto ID is an integer. So when you're using things like App Engine or MongoDB, where primary keys are either UUIDs or strings of some sort, Django can handle it. It adds two backends currently, MongoDB and App Engine. Currently, 2/3 of the users are App Engine, the rest are MongoDB. And it adds new model fields, which I'll go into later, list fields, meta model fields, and whatnot. Why would you use Django non-relational? Mostly for the same benefits you get from every non-relational database is no set schema. So like South just doesn't work with it because there's no need for it. You can have one model with a piece of data on it and another model without it. And as long as your code can handle such things, you're fine. You would use Django non-relational. Let's say you decided to start your application on Google App Engine. You could use the big table APIs directly, or you could use Django non-relational and decide later, I don't want to pay the App Engine fees, I want to move on to EC2. You can start an EC2 instance with MongoDB and your code should be portable in between them. Same as for it, you get to use the Django ORM, something you're used to, other than like a Mongo Engine or even lower level PyMongo or the App Engine big table APIs. Django rocks. I actually sent out to the non-relational list my slides. Something that you use Django non-rel because Django rocks, and you want to use non-relational system, so now you can. So I'm going to go to some very basic installation of Django non-rel. The project's now on GitHub. It used to be spread out in a couple places, and that's one thing I'll talk about later is a consolidation. The entire project's on GitHub. The best way to install it is use pip, point it to the GitHub, and tell it to install. And depending on what you're doing, you'll most likely want to install Django Toolbox, which is kind of the sandbox overall catch for anything that Django non-rel project adds. You could install Django non-rel itself and in the back end without Toolbox, but then you wouldn't be able to take advantage of some of the new fields that non-relational databases provide for you. One thing I use a lot is the non-relational permissions backend. It pretty much ports Django's permissions framework over to non-relational databases, and DB indexer, which handles the indexes and in some respect will kind of emulate joins, but not fully. So what's the major difference? You lose main-to-many field. Main-to-many field is not implemented in Django non-rel. It actually throws an error when you try and use it. And my pet project is that what we're seeing more and more lately is a lot of people using non-relational not for the speed aspect, but for the ease of not having a schema, the flexibility aspect, where you may be, in some cases, be able to emulate a many-to-many field for things like, say, you wanted to install a third-party application, Django application, but it was something you used in the event or whatnot, and speed didn't matter. Well, if you had some minor many-to-many relationship emulation, you could install it and use it, and if you had to worry about speed later, you could port it over to remove many-to-many. List field, set field, and dict field. And they are exactly what you think they are. An embedded model field. I will go into those more later. The embedded model field allows you to embed models inside other models, which if you've used Mongo, I'm a Mongo person, so I can mostly speak about Mongo, but if you use Mongo directly, you can embed documents inside of other documents. The setup is pretty simple. Once you have everything installed, Django just, it's a database Django-nonrel database engines are used exactly the same as every other. Use, in this case, Django MongoDB engine name. If there's username, password, put it in. Which one means is it can exist along other databases. Django has multi-database support, so you can have one database that's on Mongo, one database on Postgres, so you can switch between them. And I think a long time, when Django-nonrel first started, there was a talk of someone doing Django-nonrel on Mongo, and a big chunk of the talk was on using both databases at the same time. This is I think, major benefit of using Django-nonrel, because if you have an infrastructure and you decide, hey, I want to add this piece to my application at work, you can keep everything you got going in Postgres, add this database to it, and then start doing new things in Mongo or App Engine. MongoDB backend comes with a router that lets you say this app uses Mongo, so that you don't have to do the using syntax. Special fields. List field is one you'll use a lot. It works just like Python list. You put Python list into it, you get Python list out of it. It changes the way you think with programming Django applications when you can have lists. A lot of times people will have to go around things when they can just put a list into their model. The downside of the list field is that it is not automatically editable in Django admin. When your project are thinking about, right now if you try to do Django admin on a model which has a list field in it, it will throw a non-implemented error, I believe. We're thinking about just having it return none so that it doesn't appear in Django admin. The real reason list field is not automatically editable in the admin is because you can define a list field, and inside the list field can be, one of them is another model, one of them is a string, one of them is an integer. So the logic in that can get very complex if you're trying to figure out how to put some kind of interface in front of it. You can always override your admin and put a mini select, filter select or whatnot in front of it to fill in your list. Set field, dictionary field. Set field is exactly what things about it. It gets Python sets, returns Python sets, and dictionary field, same thing. Dictionaries in and out of it. About embedded model field. Embedded model field is something a lot of people will use. I don't know if you can read that, but in this case, a lot of people will use it as, like in this case, you have a company and you have employees, and you have a relation here. So you can put embedded model field employee inside a list field, so that when you pull your company, this all comes out as one record out of MongoDB. It pulls the company and all the employees with it. So this is something where you need it to speed up an application. Instead of doing joins and pulling all this in, it pulls out as one record into the system. Okay. I mostly just want to do a base introductory to the project and talk about what's going on with the project now. If you were familiar with the project, All Buttons Pressed was a startup that started the project, wrote most of the code for it. They're no longer head of the project. They kind of backed out of all open source endeavors for a while. I think they were burned out. And so what we did was we pulled a new team together from people who were using the project, giving some people the commitment, including me. Yeah, that's cool. Started an IRC channel. So if you're interested, I'm always in this channel. A couple other people, some of the main committers are in the channel. Django-nonrel and Freenode. If you ask a question, please wait, because a lot of them are in Europe. So eventually we get it. I have a IRC member, so I check it no matter how long it's been.
So isn't Google involved if it's used on App Engine?
Google, I think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, always had like 0.96 running on App Engine, but never, I'm not sure if they updated it or not. Like, I'm on the Mongo end of things. There's actually discussion on this today with Cloud SQL how it's going to change, because the new SDK says Django raw, just plain Django runs straight up on App Engine now. So how that changes. if you are an App Engine user, Django-nonrel does more than just non-relational big table access. It adds manage.py commands. It adds some more utilities. So I think that even though people can run Cloud SQL on App Engine now, Django-nonrel will still have a place. The big push for us that we're starting deployment is to get the Django-nonrel patches included in Django core. There's tickets up, they still need documentation and some testing, and some people are getting up to speed. A lot of this is the people that originally wrote the code and all bunch of press time dropped out. So like right now I'm going through all the code and some other people are going all through the code to make sure we understand it fully and get these patches into Django core. Things like the auto ID, so that you could take Django core and then install like Django toolbox and MongoDB backend and not have to pull down a fork of Django itself. A bigger push even has right now to revamp all the documentation, get it all in one place, make sure it's readable and easy to get the project set up. There's a couple people doing that right now. And another thing is refactoring MongoDB engine and Django toolbox, mostly to make the code cleaner, a little bit more, so people can contribute to it better. So what can you do? A big thing right now is if you're starting new long-term projects, like you think about using Django-nonrel if it fits your project, that's the best way to test it is, start some projects with it. Because it's Django, with some things, list fields and embedded model field, if it doesn't work out for you, you can pull it out. I mean, it's a matter of changing your models and changing some logic here and there. I ported an entire application over to non-rel in about a day. I think it was a day or two. I mean, unit test help with that, but it was pretty simple to do. So, contribute. We are looking for contributors to code. If you wanted to get.
So on the using it, if we just check out that branch and then use it with SQLite, does that actually exercise any of your code or? No. Okay.
A little bit. The patches against Django a little bit, but not much now.
Okay.
You would want to run it against Mongo or App Engine.
That's
contribute. So contribute. If you ever, it's in a way almost if you wanted to get on the ground floor. If you're good at coding and want to get involved in an open source project where the barrier to entry is pretty low, right now the barrier to entry is pretty low. We're looking for people who want to be active, who want to contribute, who want to do documentation and tests. $5, like I said, install, run the test suite on your particular system. If you have, say you run Mongo clustered, and if you run it clustered or sharded out, it'd be a great thing to try on. Documentation, which we're definitely plus of. Join the Google group. The Google group is actually pretty surprisingly active. We had even, I think, 3 discussions today, one of them about what Cloud SQL is going to do to the project. Great code, lots of code. Okay, what I'm doing with Django-nonrel. Right now, as part of my job, I'm writing Django LMS, which is a learning management system. If you've ever used Blackboard, or I think the one from MIT is like Staccato or something like that, it's a learning management system. And that's currently my big thing that I'm working on. And it's one of those things when I talked about you starting your own projects with Django-nonrel. You might run into some features you want added. I've run into 2 or 3 features I wanted added that I've coded some things up for. These slides will be up if you want to actually have URLs later. My own personal pet peeve I'm fixing right now is extending foreign keys to work in list fields. That's one way to do relations. One was the embedded model. If you have a list field of foreign keys, which is very common right now, you can't, when you insert that list, you can't just send a list of Django objects, and you can't filter using an object. Like you said, if you asked it, does this list field contain this instance of Django model, it doesn't return it. There's code in the works right now to fix that, because foreign key in Django were slightly different than the other fields. Okay, so questions?
So like this involves installing the fork of Django. Is there, like if you already have projects that are running on normal Django, is there a way to leverage like the MongoDB or whatever from within an already existing Django project? Like is there an easy way to implement that? Or?
I mean, that's one, the fork does override Django,
Okay.
but the fork is exceptionally close to Django, and we try and make sure that the security patches are updated and everything. Like we're working on 1.4 before 1.4 comes out, so right after 1.4 comes out. The difference between Django and Django-nonrel is very small.
Okay.
If you install Django-nonrel and just ran like SQLite or Postgres ULEs it, you shouldn't notice any issues between it. And that's one of the main reasons we want to eventually get the patches put into core,
Right.
so that you don't have to install a fork of Django to run MongoDB into your backend.
Are people interested in any other non-SQL databases?
Yeah, actually, there was one plate I think for a while was Cassandra. It really depends. I think I've always thought about maybe doing CouchDB. It really depends if someone's willing to contribute and put together a backend for it. That would be great. I know it can be a little bit of a daunting task because VRM isn't necessarily built for non-relational, but it can be done. Anybody else?
How receptive has the Django team been to accepting your merges?
They're pretty receptive. I mean, same as they always request tests and documentation. So it's been one of those things the team reformed, we made sure the tickets were there, and now it's kind of coming along to them and responding to any questions from them. So as anything, there's communication online that you have to hammer out, but as receptive as anything else, definitely.
Oh, I'm trying to think of examples of practical uses for non-relational and web app. And I'm thinking about like models. That's the idea of models instead of models. So you could have like a Django wiki, and your users could then make a little mini database model inside a wiki, and then that would
Possibly,
be searchable from the global.
Models inside of models, like say you had an assignment that the student was submitting, and it wasn't just a file. They could like take a project, like you had some pre-models defined in a project or whatnot, you could stick it into that individual assignment. Like I'm submitting this project, and that project has a title, metadata, and images attached to itself.
Okay.
And that doesn't have to repeat throughout the whole thing. And like, you know, when you pull one assignment submission, it doesn't have to have that, and others can.
Okay.
Another benefit on relational is speed. Places like Foursquare use it. Phraseless uses MongoDB for their data warehousing. The speed is a huge plus of it.
Doesn't have to end completely.
It's one of the things.
all the time.
No, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to use the meta models all the time.
Right.
But I tend to honestly I use list fields a lot. It's one of those things where it's hard to come up with a concrete example, but once you start doing it, you have the ability to have a list field. And I think there's like a plugin for Postgres, the list field, and I think there's some code in regards to that. But when you have the ability to have a list field, you start using lists back and forth. Like I have lists of faculty members or lists.
Lists of lists.
Yeah,
So
that's a list.
are there dumb things that beginners do that hit performance really bad?
Putting, like, if you had a list of embedded models with a ton of models in it, I mean, it has to transfer that whole record over. But I think another example is profiles, people profiles, right? With a non-relational database that doesn't have a set schema, it's one document. And like say I had a profile and I wanted to add another random social network link to it, it just becomes another member of that document. I use non-relational for where students apply to the Institute of Design, because that is one big document. Like I can pull it down as one big document, and inside of it, it's like, here's this document, and their list of addresses that they have is in there. It's a dictionary. You know, addresses, permanent, local. The list of jobs they have is a list inside that document. And it works really great for that, because when I retrieve that person's record, It comes through as one record. And if later I decide to add something else, then new students have that in their record. And as long as my code, uses, as long as I'm calling that dictionary with a .get with some kind of default on it, then the code handles that fine. Any other questions?
Would you mind going back to the example models? I had a question about that. Yeah, that guy. So maybe I'm just displaying my ignorance here, but if you create a company object and add a bunch of employees to it, are those employees then accessible by querying the employee model directly? So does it like denormalize or normalize it for you, or are those only on the company?
Those are only on the company because it's inside that document. What you'll do is you'll pull a company down and do .employees, and it pretty much gives you a list of model instances that come out of it.
Got it. So you would be responsible, if you wanted also to have them an employee, you'd be responsible for it.
Yeah.
But, got it.
It's really nice for systems where you're changing the schema all the time and you have to write complex relations because next month we have to add some other random field to the model, and the month after that, that field doesn't even exist anymore.
You're talking about adding foreign key and many-to-many support.
But there's foreign key exists already, many-to-many does not.
And foreign keys in lists.
Yeah, and they exist, they just don't work as intuitively as they could.
Okay. Because the question was that if you have embedded model field, you basically have everything you want out of a foreign key or a many-to-many, right? I mean,
when you have embedded model field, it's more like one-to-many in a way. Just like he was talking about, you can't really like pull up an individual employee and then relate back to company. So that's where many-to-many comes into relation. Because it's Django, and because we like patches into Django core, and because it's just a database backend, the main reason for me to emulate many-to-many is when I have small little apps and I don't have to go in and import these little apps. Like right now, there's Django Tasty-Py and Django Tasty-Py non-rel, because there's minor differences between them. If they affect performance because, in one of his models that he barely uses has many-to-many, that's a real question. And that'll be up to the developer too. Like if you find this thing is slowing down, you have to go in and take out the emulation. But I think it's kind of one of those things that would give you the benefit of non-relational and still the possibility to use honestly the huge world of third-party apps out there for Django. Any other questions?
So what's a good bridge between like non-rel and relational models? Like let's say you want to look up a non-rel object that's have connected to your like a relational.
I mostly just store the PKs, the primary keys. So I think on Mongo it's called UUID, 24 character, and use that to look up either with your own custom manager. Not exactly. I don't think you can do like a foreign key onto the non-relational database. I don't think Django supports that. I'm not sure. Honestly, I've never really tried it before. I've just looked up on UUID.
So are there differences if you use Mongo or App Engine? Or is that transparent?
We're trying to make it transparent. One of the things we're doing right now is having an example project that just has different settings files. One for Mongo, one for App Engine. We get a lot of App Engine questions.
Yeah.
So the idea is to make sure it's transparent, because what we want is the backend to be the same. And almost all non-relational databases can handle like a list field, a set field, dictionary field, even if in the end it just goes down to like a list, it gets translated over. But almost all of them that I know of can handle lists. Anybody else? All right. That's it. Thank you.